I'm Colleen Gallagher, CEO at OnWrd UpWrd, and you're listening to the Association Insights podcast powered by OnWrd UpWrd, where each week we interview association leaders from across the country to hear how they're trying new things, taking big risks, and delivering value for their members. We'll explore the realities of what it means to work in and with associations and bring you the insights and inspiration you need to advance your career and make big changes at your association. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Association Insights podcast powered by OnWrd UpWrd. I'm your host, Colleen Gallagher. Today's going to be another one of my solo casts where I chat through something that I've been hearing a lot of folks talk about lately in the association world. And it's something I think communications professionals in associations, they understand it intellectually, but often struggle to operationalize it day to day. And that's that great association comms, it doesn't start with content, which I know seems really counterintuitive, but it starts with your business goals. Now, before anyone panics, I'm not suggesting that content isn't important. Content absolutely matters. Your newsletter matters, your social media matters, your media relations matter, your member communications, all of it. But I find that too often communications teams find themselves caught in this cycle of activity. And a lot of it is because they're a small team doing a whole lot and serving every single department across the association. And so we're creating content, they're sending emails, social media, building campaigns, promoting events, producing reports, measuring open rates, tracking impressions. It goes on and on and on. And before long, these teams find themselves incredibly busy, but not always clear on whether the work is actually moving the association forward. And I think one of the biggest differences I see between associations that communicate effectively and associations that truly create impact is where they begin. So for me, those associations that are strongest, they're not asking, hey, what are we going to post this week? They're asking, what are we trying to accomplish with our communications this week? Because communications is never the goal. I say this in every meeting I have with a new client. I say, we're not here to communicate for the sake of communicating. We're here to communicate to help you meet your business objectives. Communications, it's the vehicle. It's such an important piece and it helps get you there, but it's helping you work towards a bigger goal. That could be member retention. It could be event attendance, maybe certification adoption. You might be trying to grow sponsorship or non-dues revenue. We hear a lot about the importance of advocacy influence, and so many of our associations are focused on workforce and how they can help their members in that way. It's driving awareness for the industry or the profession. It's growing your association as a whole. Communications, it truly exists to help achieve those outcomes. And when teams anchor their work to those outcomes, everything becomes more strategic. So what does that look like in practice? One of the most common challenges I see in associations is that comms teams often become the internal service department. Someone needs an email, comms gets on it. Someone needs a graphic, comms is there to create it. Someone has a webinar, communications is going to promote it. Research launches a report, the comms team builds a campaign around it. It's amazing the work that our comms teams do in associations. It truly blows my mind every day. And supporting these internal teams is super important. The danger is that communications can become reactive instead of strategic if you get caught up in it. The work just becomes about fulfilling these requests rather than the results. You've got to check all the boxes on the list. You're not thinking ahead. You're just doing because things are constantly coming at you. And when that happens, teams spend a tremendous amount of energy executing without always understanding the larger objective. I often encourage comms leaders to just pause, which is not easy, I know, but ask yourself one simple question before you launch any initiative. What organizational goal does this support for our association and for our membership? Not what department requested it, not what tactic we're going to use, what business goal does this come back to and support? Because that answer, that's what's going to change everything. So let's think about event attendance as an example. Imagine you have your annual conference coming up. A lot of associations immediately focus on the usual promotional tactics we always see. How many emails are we going to see? What social graphics should we create? Do we have a theme? Should we run ads? What landing pages do we need to build? No doubt, these are important questions. I'm not trying to belittle them in any way, but I want to really enforce that they should be the secondary questions. The first question should be, why is attendance important? Is this our biggest revenue stream? Is it where member engagement is strongest? Does it drive retention? Does it fuel sponsorship? Maybe it's just where your strategic priorities are advanced. But once you really understand that objective, your communications are going to become so much more intentional, and you're ultimately going to be better at what you're doing, because you're not just promoting this annual event, you are now supporting a critical association outcome. And that changes the messages that you prioritize, changes the audience you're going to target, and the metrics that you're measuring to see if you're reaching success. And I think the same principle, it applies to memberships. So many associations right now we're seeing are facing increased competition for attention, for time, for budget. Not everyone just joins an association out of college because that's what you should do. It's really hard ask to get young people in associations. It's a hard ask to get people who have always been in them to stay. Members are asking tougher questions. They are evaluating more closely. They're deciding where to invest with their very limited resources. In that environment, communication plays such a significant role. But member comms shouldn't simply be about sending the updates and, here's another thing to sign up for. It's got to come back to reinforcing value, and it's got to demonstrate relevance. Your communications to members should be about helping members understand why the association matters in their professional lives. Obviously, retention is a strategic priority. And with that being the case, every communication should be viewed through that lens. Does this strengthen our connection? Does it reinforce value? Does it demonstrate an impact? Help the members see themselves in the association? That's a really different approach than just saying we've got to get this newsletter out. Another area where I see this becoming incredibly important is on that sponsorship and non-dues revenue I mentioned earlier. So, like I said, this is a growing priority for a lot of associations right now, and we're seeing them look for ways to diversify revenue streams and really just create stronger partnerships. Communications can play a seriously important role in that effort. But again, it starts with understanding the business goal. So sponsors, they don't just want visibility in their logo plastered on something anymore. They want outcomes and engagement. They want it to convey credibility. They want to build connections out of it, and they want opportunities to reach the right audience, which is not what we all want. So when communications teams understand those objectives, then they can help create programs and storytelling that are going to deliver much greater value. Instead of treating sponsorship as this logo placement exercise that used to be in the past, communications now becomes a strategic tool for partnership success. That also helps when you're talking about the age-old, how do we get communications a voice in the C-suite? The same thing is true on the advocacy front. So many associations invest really significant resources into their advocacy initiatives, yet communications and advocacy sometimes operate in parallel rather than together. The most effective associations, though, they understand that comms helps create the conditions that are going to make advocacy more successful. Your members need to understand the issues. Stakeholders have to trust the organization. Media has to recognize the association as a credible source. And policymakers are looking for consistent thought leadership. When all of that happens, advocacy efforts become stronger. So again, communications is not that end goal, but it is getting you to that desired outcome. I also think this shift is becoming increasingly important with expectations from leadership changing. So you've got association CEOs, boards, executive teams. They're all under pressure too. I said earlier, associations are being asked to really demonstrate value and drive growth, protect revenue, navigate uncertainty, show results. There's a lot coming at these people in leadership and across the association. And because of that, they're asking communications teams different questions than they did 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. They don't it's not to say they don't care, but they're not just wanting to know how many people opened the email or how many impressions did we get or followers did we gain. They want to know the real answers. Is membership growing? Are registrations increasing? Is our awareness actually improving? Are stakeholders engaging? And does this support our strategic priorities? A lot of our clients are going through strategic plans right now and strategic planning efforts. And it's really great to see how much focus they're putting on this and really mapping out what their future is going to look like. Communications leaders who can connect their work to the association outcomes, they're becoming incredibly valuable because it's not just about reporting activity, it's about demonstrating that contribution. And that's, again, where comms can earn that seat at the strategic table. Of course, this doesn't mean every communication effort has to tie directly to revenue. Not everything can be measured that way. I understand that. But trust really matters. I did a full episode about trust recently, and your reputation matters. Building those relationships, creating consistent thought leadership that really sets you as a leader in the field. Those things, they're long-term investments. But even those efforts, they should connect back to those larger association goals that I keep talking about. The strongest communicators understand both that immediate purpose and the broader impact of their work. So if you're listening today and still wondering, how do I put this into practice? Here are a few questions I would encourage you to ask, right away before launching any campaign. Write it down, put it on a sticky note and have it there to remind you to say, what association goal are we supporting? How will success be defined? What behavior are we trying to influence? What audience matters most? How will we know this worked? And then maybe most importantly, if this communication is successful, what changes in the end? Because that is where we see the real value. It's not the activity, the output, it's the outcome. I'm going to keep on saying that because it really is what matters in the end. And the associations that stand out over the next few years, they're not going to be the ones producing the most content, because with Gen AI, everyone can produce all the content. They're going to be the ones that are creating the strongest alignment between communications and strategy. And they're going to understand that communications, it's not a separate function operating on its own island. It is one of the key business drivers, trust builders, growth enablers, and strategic assets that your association has. And when comms teams consistently connect their work to those association priorities, they move from being that support function to becoming an essential partner for the association. And that's when comms has the greatest opportunity to make that strong impact. I think that's where the future of association comms is really headed too. This is obviously a topic I'm pretty passionate about, so I would love to hear your thoughts and comments. You can always send me a message on LinkedIn. I hope you subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with your colleagues in the marketing and comms world. With that, thanks for tuning in once again for another Association Insights podcast powered by OnWrd and UpWrd. Till next time, thanks for listening.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. The Association Insights podcast, powered by OnWrd and UpWrd, is a production of OnWrd and UpWrd Marketing and Communications, where our mission is to make associations and nonprofits the go-to source in their industries through earned media and thought leadership. This podcast is an extension of our newsletter, a weekly collection of best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies delivered straight to your inbox. Have you undertaken a big change at your association? Or do you have some words of wisdom from the trenches of association life? Well, we want to hear from you, and so do our listeners. Drop us a note at info@onwardupwrd.com. That's info@onwrdupwrd.com. Be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share with your friends and colleagues. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. Come back next week for more association inspiration and insights. Thanks for tuning in.